Dr. Maria Lopez adjusted her glasses as she reviewed the latest reports. The SCP Foundation, her workplace for over a decade, had seen its share of anomalies, but SCP-005 was different. The skeleton key, as it was nicknamed, had surfaced in an abandoned mansion, raising more questions than answers. "Lopez, you need to see this," Agent Jonathan Hughes said, entering her lab with a cautious look. Maria followed him to the secure containment room. There, under bright, sterile lights, lay SCP-005. It was an unassuming old-fashioned key, worn and unremarkable. Yet it exuded an unsettling aura, as if it was aware of the attention it garnered. Agent Hughes cleared his throat. The recovery team found it in a locked chest. The house had been sealed for decades, untouched by time. Yet this key, it's pristine. "Have we tested it?" Maria asked, her voice steady but her mind racing with possibilities. Hughes nodded. "We tried it on several locks. It opens all of them, regardless of complexity. Mechanical, electronic, biometric. It doesn't matter." Maria's eyes widened. "Any side effects?" Hughes hesitated. "Nothing overt, but there's a pattern. Each lock it opens, something happens. Lights flicker, temperatures drop, and the air gets heavy, almost like the key is drawing energy from its surroundings." Maria turned to the key, her scientific curiosity piqued but tempered with caution. "We need to understand its origins. Has anyone tried to trace its history?" Hughes handed her a file. The mansion's last owner was a recluse, a collector of rare artifacts. No records of where he acquired the key. But there are mentions of similar items in old texts, always associated with unexplained events. As Maria flipped through the file, the door opened and Researcher Emily Wang entered, her face pale. "Dr. Lopez, you need to see this." They followed Emily to the security office. The monitors showed footage from the containment room. The key lay still, but shadows danced around it, flickering unnaturally in the bright room. The temperature readings were plummeting rapidly. "What's causing this?" Maria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We don't know," Emily replied. "But it started the moment the key was placed inside. It's alive." The lights in the office flickered. Maria felt a chill run down her spine. She glanced at Hughes, who was watching the monitors with a grim expression. "We need to contain this," Hughes said, his voice firm. "Whatever it is, we can't let it breach." Maria nodded, her mind racing. "Double the security, increase the monitoring, and start researching similar artifacts. We need to know what we're dealing with." As they left the office, the atmosphere grew heavier, the weight of the unknown pressing down on them. Maria couldn't shake the feeling that they had only scratched the surface of SCP-005's true nature. And whatever secrets it held, they were far from benign. The key's eerie presence lingered in her thoughts as she prepared for the long night ahead. She couldn't help but wonder what doors it would open next, and what horrors lay behind them. The containment chamber was a fortress within the SCP Foundation, designed to hold the most dangerous anomalies. Steel-reinforced walls, electromagnetic locks, and a constant surveillance system ensured nothing could escape. At its center, in a glass case, lay SCP-005, the skeleton key. Dr. Maria Lopez watched the key from behind the observation window. "Is everything set?" she asked, turning to Agent Jonathan Hughes and Researcher Emily Wang. "All security measures are active," Hughes confirmed. "Double guards at every entrance, and the monitoring system is running 24/7. Emily glanced nervously at the key. "Have we considered all possibilities? This thing, it doesn't just unlock doors." Maria nodded. "We're treating it as a top-level threat. Any anomalies, any changes, we respond immediately." Hours passed in uneasy silence, the team meticulously documenting every flicker of the key, every fluctuation in temperature. The air seemed to hum with anticipation, a tangible tension that settled into their bones. It started with a low hum, almost imperceptible at first. Maria glanced at the monitors, noticing the temperature drop. "Something's happening," she said, her voice tight. The lights flickered, shadows elongating unnaturally. On the screen, the key seemed to pulse with a dark energy. The air in the containment chamber grew thick, as if infused with a malevolent presence. "Stay alert," Hughes ordered, his hand resting on his sidearm. A loud crash echoed through the facility, followed by the sound of metal groaning. "Containment breach," someone shouted over the intercom. Maria's heart pounded as she raced to the control panel. "What's the status?" "East Wing, Sector 4, Emily reported, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "Something's loose." The screen showed a security door torn off its hinges, shadows writhing in the corridor beyond. "It's connected to the key," Maria said, dread pooling in her stomach. "Whatever's happening, it's because of SCP-005. Hughes grabbed his radio. "Teams Alpha and Bravo, secure Sector 4. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary." The minutes stretched into a taut silence, the only sound the frantic tapping of Emily's keyboard and the distant hum of machinery. Then the radio crackled to life. "We've secured the area. No sign of the intruder." Maria exhaled slowly, but the tension didn't ease. "Keep searching. Whatever caused this is still out there." The lights flickered again, plunging the room into darkness for a heartbeat before stabilizing. Maria's skin prickled with unease. "This isn't over," she murmured. Back in the containment chamber, the key lay motionless, an innocuous object at first glance. But Maria knew better. It was a Pandora's box, a door to horrors they could barely comprehend. "Double the guards and increase monitoring," Maria ordered, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "We can't take any chances." As they reinforced the security measures, Maria couldn't shake the feeling that they were merely delaying the inevitable. The key was more than just a tool, it was a catalyst for something dark, something ancient. That night the facility was eerily quiet, the silence broken only by the occasional hum of machinery. Maria sat in her office, reviewing the day's events. Her eyes were heavy, but sleep was a distant thought. A soft knock on the door startled her. Emily stepped in, her face pale. "Dr. Lopez, you need to see this." Maria followed her to the observation room. The monitors showed the key, now glowing with an otherworldly light. Shadows danced around it, forming shapes that seemed almost human. "What's happening?" Maria whispered, a chill running down her spine. Emily shook her head. "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's getting stronger." The key pulsed, and the shadows surged, pressing against the glass as if seeking a way out. Maria watched in horror, realizing that their containment measures might not be enough. "We need to find a way to neutralize it," Maria said, her voice resolute, "before it's too late." As the shadows writhed and twisted, Maria knew they were facing something beyond their understanding. The key was a harbinger, and the true horror was yet to come. Dr. Maria Lopez sat in her dimly lit office, surrounded by stacks of ancient books and crumbling documents. The flickering light from her desk lamp cast eerie shadows on the walls, mirroring the unease she felt. SCP-005 was no ordinary key, it was a relic of dark history, and she needed to understand its past to contain its future. Agent Jonathan Hughes entered, carrying a thick, leather-bound volume. "Found another one," he said, placing it on her desk. "It's from the late 1800s, mentions a key with similar properties." Maria opened the book, her fingers trembling slightly. The pages were brittle, filled with handwritten accounts of strange occurrences. "Every time this key appears, something terrible follows," she murmured, reading a passage about a small village wiped out by an unexplained plague. Emily Wang joined them, carrying a tablet. "I've cross-referenced the key with other anomalies," she said. "There are records of similar artifacts throughout history, always associated with disaster." Maria's eyes scanned the tablet, her heart sinking as the pattern emerged. Wars, plagues, natural disasters. The key is always there. A cold shiver ran down her spine. The key wasn't just opening doors, it was a catalyst for chaos. "We need to trace its origins," Maria said, her voice determined. "Find out where it came from." Hughes nodded. "I've contacted a historian who specializes in occult artifacts. He might have some answers." Days passed in a blur of research and sleepless nights. Maria and her team pored over ancient texts, piecing together fragments of the key's dark history. Each discovery only deepened the mystery and heightened their dread. One evening, as the team gathered in the conference room, Hughes entered with a somber expression. "Got a lead," he said, placing a weathered map on the table. "An old monastery in Eastern Europe, supposedly where the key was first created." Maria studied the map, the monastery marked with an ominous red X. "We need to go there," she said. "See what we can find." The journey was long and arduous, the road winding through desolate landscapes. The monastery loomed ahead, a crumbling relic of a forgotten time. As they approached, a sense of foreboding settled over them. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of decay. Dust motes danced in the weak sunlight filtering through stained glass windows. They split up, searching for any clues about the key's origins. Maria found herself in a dimly lit chamber, ancient texts lining the walls. One book, bound in black leather, caught her eye. She opened it, the pages filled with cryptic symbols and dark incantations. Her breath caught as she read a passage about a ritual to create a key that could open any door. "The skeleton key," she whispered. "Forged in blood and dark magic." Suddenly, a low hum filled the room, the same unsettling sound she'd heard back at the Foundation. The shadows around her deepened, and a cold wind swept through the chamber. "Maria, we need to go," Hughes' voice echoed down the hallway, urgent and filled with fear. She grabbed the book and ran, the shadows seeming to reach for her as she fled. Outside, the team regrouped, their faces pale and tense. "We found records of the ritual," Maria said, showing them the book. "This key was never meant to be used. It's a tool of destruction." As they made their way back to the Foundation, the weight of their discovery pressed heavily on them. The key's dark history was now clear, but its future was still uncertain. Back at the Foundation, Maria knew their task was more critical than ever. They weren't just containing an object, they were holding back an ancient evil. "We have to find a way to neutralize it," she said, her voice resolute, "before it unleashes something we can't control." The shadows seemed to whisper around them, a constant reminder of the key's dark power. As Maria and her team prepared for the next steps, the sense of impending doom hung over them like a dark cloud. The true horror of SCP-005 was just beginning to unfold. Dr. Maria Lopez stood before the reinforced door of the containment lab, her heart pounding. Inside, SCP-005 lay on a sterile table, surrounded by an array of locks. The air was thick with anticipation. Today they would push the boundaries of their understanding, and perhaps their control. "Ready?" Agent Jonathan Hughes asked, his voice steady but eyes betraying his unease. Maria nodded. "As ready as we can be. Let's proceed." Researcher Emily Wang activated the cameras, recording every angle. Commencing Experiment 1A, she announced, her fingers flying over the keyboard. The room was bathed in the cold, clinical light of the overhead fluorescence. Maria carefully picked up the key with gloved hands. She approached the first lock, an old-fashioned padlock. The key slid in smoothly, and with a turn, the lock clicked open. The room held its breath. Lock 1 opened, Maria reported, stepping back. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the lights flickered and a chill swept through the room. Emily glanced at the monitors. Temperature's dropping, she said, her voice tight. Keep going, Hughes urged, his hand on his weapon. Maria moved to the next lock, a modern electronic lock. She inserted SCP-005, feeling a strange resistance. With a twist, the lock disengaged, but this time, the temperature plummeted rapidly, frost forming on the edges of the table. Something's wrong, Emily said, alarm creeping into her voice. Readings are spiking. Before they could react, the room plunged into darkness. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through their bones. Shadows writhed in the corners, elongating and twisting into unnatural shapes. Switch to backup power, Hughes shouted, but the emergency lights failed to activate. Maria's breath came in short gasps as she fumbled for a flashlight. When she turned it on, the beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the key, which now glowed with an eerie light. Suddenly, the shadows coalesced into a figure, tall and indistinct, its form flickering like a mirage. Maria's flashlight flickered, and she felt a cold dread seep into her bones. Shut it down. Now, she screamed. Emily frantically typed commands into the computer, but the figure advanced, the air growing colder with each step. Hughes fired his weapon, the shots echoing in the confined space, but the bullets passed through the figure as if it were smoke. Just as the shadow loomed over Maria, Emily managed to cut the power. The lights returned, and the figure dissipated, leaving only a lingering chill. The team stood in stunned silence, the room eerily still. Maria's hands trembled as she placed SCP-005 back on the table, its glow fading. Experiment terminated, Emily said, her voice shaking. We need a new plan. As they exited the lab, the sense of dread didn't lift. The key had shown them a glimpse of its true power, a dark force lurking behind every door it opened. Back in the briefing room, Maria slumped into a chair, exhaustion and fear etched into her features. We can't continue like this, she said. Every use of the key unleashes something we can't control. Hughes nodded, his face grim. We need to rethink our approach. Containment isn't enough. We have to neutralize it. Emily placed a hand on Maria's shoulder. We'll find a way. We have to. The horrors of the day's experiment lingered in their minds, a stark reminder of the key's malevolent potential. As they prepared for the next steps, a chilling thought settled over Maria. Each lock the key opened brought them closer to an unfathomable darkness. The skeleton key was not just an object of curiosity, it was a portal to nightmares, and they were running out of time to close it. The Foundation buzzed with the quiet hum of machinery and the murmur of voices over intercoms. Security was tighter than ever, and everyone was on edge after the last experiment. Dr. Maria Lopez sat in the control room, her eyes fixed on the monitors displaying SCP-005 in its reinforced glass case. Agent Jonathan Hughes entered, his face a mask of determination. How are we looking? He asked. Stable for now, Maria replied. But I'm not taking any chances. Just then, a sudden alarm blared through the facility. Red lights flashed, casting an ominous glow. Security breach in Sector 3, an automated voice announced. What's happening? Emily Wang asked, rushing into the room. Hughes grabbed his radio. All units, report to Sector 3. Secure SCP-005 at all costs. Maria's heart raced as she watched the screens. Figures moved through the shadows, avoiding the cameras with practiced precision. We've got an intruder, she said, her voice tight. Hughes nodded, already moving. Stay here. Lock down this room. He disappeared into the corridor, leaving Maria and Emily in a tense silence. The monitors showed guards rushing to intercept the intruder, but the figure moved too quickly, too purposefully. "They know exactly where they're going," Emily whispered. Maria's fingers flew over the keyboard, trying to track the intruder's movements. "They're headed for the containment chamber." The lights flickered, and the screens momentarily went black. When they came back on, the figure was inside the containment chamber, standing before SCP-005. "How did they get through the locks?" Emily asked, panic rising in her voice. The figure reached for the key, and Maria's blood ran cold. "We can't let them take it." Hughes' voice crackled over the intercom. "We're almost there. Hold on." But it was too late. The figure grabbed SCP-005, and the room plunged into darkness. The low hum that had haunted them before returned, louder and more menacing. "Backup power now," Maria shouted, but the emergency systems failed to respond. In the pitch black, they heard the sound of locks clicking, doors opening. The air grew cold, and a sense of dread filled the room. "They're using the key," Emily said, her voice trembling. "They're unlocking something." Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, revealing Hughes and his team bursting into the containment chamber. The intruder was gone, but SCP-005 was still there, glowing with an eerie light. "Secure the key," Hughes ordered, his voice tight with frustration. Maria watched as they placed SCP-005 back in its case, locking it down with every precaution they had. But the sense of unease lingered. The intruder had known too much, moved too quickly. Back in the control room, Maria sank into her chair, exhaustion and fear weighing heavily on her. Whoever that was, they knew exactly what they were doing. Hughes nodded, his face grim. "We have a mole. Someone inside the Foundation." Emily looked pale. "What do we do now?" Maria met Hughes' gaze, determination hardening her resolve. "We find out who it is, and we stop them before they can try again." As they doubled the security measures and reviewed the footage, a chilling realization settled over Maria. The skeleton key was more than just a tool, it was a weapon, and someone wanted to unleash its full potential. The shadows seemed to close in around them, and Maria knew that their battle against the darkness was far from over. The true horror of SCP-005 wasn't just its power, it was the unseen enemies who sought to wield it. The hunt for the infiltrator had begun, and the stakes had never been higher. Dr. Maria Lopez sat at her desk, staring at the array of documents spread before her. Agent Jonathan Hughes and Researcher Emily Wang were beside her, the tension in the room palpable. They had spent the last few days piecing together the mystery of the infiltrator, but answers were elusive. "We're missing something," Maria said, her voice strained. The infiltrator knew too much. They had to have inside information. Emily nodded, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "I've been cross-referencing every anomaly with SCP-005. There are connections we haven't seen before." Hughes leaned in, his expression grim. "Like what?" Emily tapped on her tablet, bringing up a series of files. "Look at this. Every time SCP-005 appeared in history, there were other anomalies in the vicinity. It's like the key attracts them." Maria's eyes widened as she scanned the data. Or it's part of something bigger. A network of anomalies. Hughes frowned. "So we're dealing with more than just the key. What does it mean?" Before Maria could answer, the lights flickered. Her heart skipped a beat, and she exchanged a tense glance with Hughes. "Not again," she whispered. An alarm blared, and the red lights flashed. "Containment breach in Sector 4, the automated voice announced. "Move," Hughes barked, leading the way out of the office. They sprinted through the corridors, the chilling hum growing louder with each step. As they neared Sector 4, the temperature dropped. Frost coated the walls, and their breaths came out in visible puffs. Shadows writhed at the edges of their vision, and the oppressive feeling of dread settled over them. They rounded a corner to find a team of guards standing before a containment chamber. Inside, SCP-005 lay on a pedestal, glowing with an ominous light. The shadows inside the room seemed alive, swirling around the key like dark, sentient mist. "It's reacting to something," Maria said, her voice barely audible over the hum. Hughes motioned for the guards to spread out. "Secure the area. No one gets in or out." Emily stared at the key, her face pale. "It's trying to connect with something, or someone." Maria's mind raced. "The infiltrator. They're trying to use the key for something specific. We need to find out what." Suddenly the shadows coalesced into a figure, much like the one they had encountered before. It reached for the key, and the glass case around SCP-005 shattered, shards flying everywhere. "Get back," Hughes shouted, firing his weapon. The bullets passed through the figure, and it advanced, the shadows thickening around it. Maria grabbed a nearby fire extinguisher and sprayed it at the entity, the cold mist disrupting its form. "Go," she yelled, as the figure recoiled. They retreated to the control room, slamming the door shut behind them. Emily quickly typed commands into the computer, sealing the sector and activating additional containment measures. "We need to understand its connection to the other anomalies," Maria said, panting. "There's a pattern here. Something we're missing." Emily nodded, pulling up more data. Every appearance of SCP-005 is linked to significant events involving other anomalies. It's almost like it's a key to something greater. Maria's eyes widened as the realization hit her. It's not just a key for locks. It's a key for unlocking other anomalies. Hughes looked grim. And someone knows this. They're using it to unleash chaos. The room fell silent as the weight of their discovery sank in. Maria knew they had to act fast. "We need to find the infiltrator and stop them before they can use the key again." Emily's fingers flew over the keyboard, bringing up security footage and data logs. "I'll trace every access point, every movement. We'll find them." Hughes nodded, his jaw set. "And when we do, we'll make sure they can't use SCP-005 or any other anomaly ever again." As they delved deeper into the investigation, the shadows seemed to whisper around them, a constant reminder of the lurking dangers. The true horror of SCP-005 was not just its power, but the dark intent of those who sought to wield it. The clock was ticking, and Maria knew they were running out of time. The hunt for the infiltrator continued, and with it, the fight to prevent a catastrophic chain reaction that could unleash unspeakable horrors on the world. The helicopter ride to the remote archaeological site was rough, the wind howling outside and the landscape below barren and desolate. Dr. Maria Lopez clutched her coat tighter, feeling the chill seep into her bones. Agent Jonathan Hughes and Researcher Emily Wang sat across from her, their faces set with determination. The site, a forgotten monastery hidden in the mountains of Eastern Europe, held the secrets they desperately needed. As the helicopter touched down, the team disembarked, squinting against the harsh wind. "Let's move," Hughes said, leading the way. "We don't have much daylight." The monastery loomed ahead, a crumbling edifice of stone and shadows. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of decay, the darkness almost palpable. They activated their flashlights, the beams cutting through the gloom. "Stick together," Maria warned, her voice echoing off the ancient walls. "We don't know what's in here." They moved cautiously, the silence oppressive. The halls were lined with faded murals, depicting scenes of rituals and dark figures holding a key. Maria felt a shiver run down her spine. "This place has a history," Emily whispered, her eyes wide as she scanned the walls. "A dark one." They reached a large chamber, its centerpiece a stone altar covered in dust and cobwebs. Atop the altar lay a book, bound in black leather and inscribed with cryptic symbols. Maria approached it, her hands trembling as she opened the cover. "This is it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The ritual to create SCP-005. The pages detailed a gruesome process involving blood sacrifices and dark magic. The key was not just a tool, but a manifestation of malevolent forces. Maria's stomach churned as she read the final lines. "The key opens the door to the abyss." "We need to take this back to the Foundation," Hughes said, his voice tense. "This is bigger than we thought." As they turned to leave, the air grew colder, the shadows in the room deepening. Maria's flashlight flickered, and she felt an oppressive weight settle over her. "We're not alone," Emily said, her voice trembling. From the darkness, figures emerged, their forms barely human, eyes glowing with an eerie light. They moved silently, surrounding the team. Maria's heart pounded, and she clutched the book tighter. Hughes raised his weapon. "Stay back," he shouted, but the figures continued to advance. Maria flipped through the book desperately. "There must be something here," she muttered, searching for a way to repel the entities. The figures reached out with shadowy hands, the temperature dropping further. Maria's breath came out in visible puffs, her fingers numb with cold. "Here," she shouted, finding a passage. "A warding spell." Emily and Hughes closed in, protecting her as she read the incantation aloud. The words echoed in the chamber, the shadows recoiling slightly. The figures hissed, their forms wavering. Maria continued, her voice growing stronger. With a final desperate cry, she finished the spell, and the figures dissolved into mist. The room fell silent, the oppressive weight lifting. Maria collapsed against the altar, exhausted but relieved. "Let's get out of here," Hughes said, helping her to her feet. "We've got what we need." They made their way back through the monastery, the shadows still lurking but less menacing. As they boarded the helicopter, Maria glanced back at the ancient structure, a sense of foreboding lingering. Back at the Foundation, they pored over the book, piecing together the full extent of the key's power. Maria knew they had uncovered only a fraction of the darkness surrounding SCP-005. The true battle was just beginning. The key was more than an anomaly, it was a beacon for ancient evils, and they had only just begun to understand the horrors it could unleash. The shadows of the monastery seemed to follow them, a constant reminder of the abyss they were teetering on the edge of. The fight to contain SCP-005 was far from over, and Maria knew they had to be prepared for whatever came next. The ancient secret had been revealed, but the full scope of its implications remained shrouded in darkness. The Foundation buzzed with tension, the atmosphere thick with anticipation and dread. Dr. Maria Lopez stood in the control room, her eyes glued to the monitors displaying SCP-005 in its glass case. The book from the monastery lay open on the desk, its dark secrets still haunting her thoughts. Agent Jonathan Hughes paced nearby, his expression grim. "We have to be ready for anything," he said. That book revealed more than we ever wanted to know. Researcher Emily Wang nodded, her face pale. "We've reinforced the containment protocols, but I have a bad feeling about this." Maria took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. "Let's make sure we're prepared for whatever happens." Suddenly the alarms blared and the lights flickered. "Containment breach," the automated voice announced. "Sector 7. "Not again," Hughes muttered, grabbing his weapon. "Let's move." They raced through the corridors, the hum of machinery and the distant sound of shouting filling the air. As they neared Sector 7, the temperature dropped and the shadows grew darker. They burst into the containment chamber to find chaos. Guards lay unconscious, and the air was thick with an unnatural fog. SCP-005 was gone, the glass case shattered. "Find that key," Hughes shouted, his voice barely audible over the cacophony. Maria's heart pounded as she scanned the room. "We need to check the security footage," she said, rushing to the nearest terminal. Emily joined her, fingers flying over the keyboard. "Got it," she said, bringing up the video feed. The footage showed a figure, cloaked in shadows, slipping into the chamber and taking SCP-005. The intruder moved with inhuman speed, disappearing into the fog. "They knew exactly what they were doing," Maria said, her voice tight. "We have to find them before they use the key." They split up, searching the facility room by room. The fog seemed to follow them, tendrils of darkness creeping along the walls. Maria felt a cold dread settling over her, the sense of impending doom growing stronger with each step. In a dimly lit corridor, Maria heard a whisper. She turned, her flashlight beam cutting through the fog. "Who's there?" she called, her voice echoing off the walls. A shadowy figure emerged, holding SCP-005. "You shouldn't have come," it said, its voice a chilling whisper. Maria's heart raced. "Put the key down," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. The figure laughed, a sound that sent chills down her spine. "It's too late," it said, raising the key. "The door is already open." Before Maria could react, the figure turned and disappeared into the fog. She ran after it, her flashlight flickering. "Hughes. Emily. I need backup." She rounded a corner to find a door, previously sealed, now open. A dark, swirling vortex lay beyond, the air around it crackling with energy. The figure stood at the edge, holding SCP-005 aloft. "Stop," Maria shouted, but the figure stepped through the vortex, disappearing into the darkness. Maria skidded to a halt, staring into the abyss. The shadows seemed to reach for her, the cold dread intensifying. She took a step back, her mind racing. Hughes and Emily arrived, their faces pale. "What happened?" Hughes asked, his voice strained. "They went through the portal," Maria said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have to close it." Emily scanned the book, her eyes wide. "There's a counter-ritual," she said, "but it's dangerous." "We don't have a choice," Maria said. "Do it." Emily nodded, chanting the incantation. The air around them vibrated, the shadows writhing in response. The portal flickered, the vortex shrinking. Suddenly, a blast of energy knocked them off their feet. The vortex imploded, the shadows dissipating. The room fell silent, the oppressive weight lifting. Maria struggled to her feet, her body aching. "Is it over?" she asked, her voice shaky. Emily nodded, her face pale. "For now. But the key is still out there." Hughes helped Maria up, his expression grim. "We need to find it and the intruder. This isn't over." As they regrouped, the sense of unease lingered. The key had unleashed something dark, something they had only just begun to understand. The battle to contain SCP-005 was far from over. The shadows had retreated, but the true horror still lurked in the darkness. Maria knew they had to be ready for whatever came next. The fight against the ancient evil had only just begun. Dr. Maria Lopez sat in the briefing room, the tension palpable. Agent Jonathan Hughes and Researcher Emily Wang were beside her, their faces etched with determination. They had gathered every scrap of information, every piece of evidence, and now they had a plan. "We have to neutralize SCP-005, Maria said, her voice steady. "Permanently." Hughes nodded. "We tracked the infiltrator to an abandoned facility on the outskirts of the city. It's heavily guarded, but this is our best shot." Emily placed a map on the table, marking the facility's layout. "We'll need to disable the security systems and take out the guards. Once inside, we can locate the key and use the counter ritual to neutralize it. Maria's eyes scanned the map. We'll split into 2 teams. Team A will handle the security. Team B will retrieve the key and perform the ritual. Let's move out, Hughes said, standing up. Time is against us. They suited up, the weight of their mission pressing down on them. The helicopter ride to the facility was tense, the silence filled with unspoken fears. As they landed, the cold night air bit into their skin, the facility looming ahead like a dark sentinel. Team A, with me, Hughes said, leading half the team towards the security hub. Team B, you're with Maria. Maria nodded, leading Emily and the rest of their team towards the main building. They moved silently, shadows against the night. The guards were well armed, but they had the element of surprise. Hughes' voice crackled over the radio. Security is down. Move in. Maria signaled her team, and they slipped inside. The corridors were dark and silent, the air thick with tension. They reached the main chamber, where SCP-005 was held. The infiltrator stood by the pedestal, the key glowing in their hand. You're too late, they sneered, their voice echoing in the chamber. Maria stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. Put the key down. The infiltrator laughed, a sound that sent chills down her spine. You don't understand its power. This key is the future. Emily began chanting the counter ritual, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. The air crackled with energy, the shadows around them writhing. The infiltrator raised SCP-005, and the room plunged into darkness. You cannot stop what's coming. Maria felt a cold dread settle over her, but she stood her ground. We have to. Hughes and his team burst into the room, weapons drawn. Drop the key, he shouted. The infiltrator hesitated, the shadows flickering. Maria seized the moment, lunging forward and grabbing SCP-005. The key burned cold in her hand, and the shadows screamed, recoiling from the light. Emily's chanting grew louder, the words resonating through the chamber. The infiltrator tried to wrench the key from Maria's grasp, but Hughes tackled them, pinning them to the ground. Maria held the key aloft, the light growing brighter, the shadows dissipating. Emily's voice reached a crescendo, and with a final word, the key shattered, the pieces dissolving into light. The room fell silent, the oppressive weight lifting. Maria sank to her knees, exhaustion washing over her. Hughes helped her up, his face a mix of relief and determination. It's over, he said, his voice soft. Maria nodded, tears of relief in her eyes. For now. They secured the facility, capturing the infiltrator and ensuring no remnants of SCP-005 remained. As dawn broke, they returned to the Foundation, the sense of victory tempered by the knowledge of what they had faced. In the debriefing room, Maria sat with Hughes and Emily, the weight of their experience settling over them. We did it, she said, her voice weary but resolute. But we have to stay vigilant. There are more anomalies out there. Hughes nodded. We'll be ready. As they left the room, Maria felt a sense of closure, but also a renewed sense of purpose. They had faced the darkness and prevailed, but the fight against the unknown was never truly over. The shadows had been pushed back, but they still lingered at the edges of their vision. The true horror of SCP-005 had been neutralized, but the world was full of anomalies waiting to be discovered. Maria knew their work was far from over. The battle against the darkness would continue, and they would face it head-on, together. The sun rose over the Foundation, casting long shadows across the grounds. Dr. Maria Lopez stood by her office window, watching the light slowly dispel the darkness. The battle was over, but the scars remained. She turned as Agent Jonathan Hughes entered, his face reflecting the same exhaustion she felt. How are the others? Maria asked, her voice soft. Hughes shrugged, recovering. Emily's gone home to get some rest. She did an incredible job. Maria nodded, feeling a swell of pride for her team. They had faced unimaginable horrors and emerged victorious, but the cost had been high. They sat down, the room filled with a heavy silence. "We stopped the immediate threat," Maria said, breaking the quiet. "But the infiltrator, did they say anything?" Hughes shook his head. "Nothing useful. Just more cryptic warnings about the coming darkness, whoever they are. They believe in this cause." Maria sighed, running a hand through her hair. "We need to stay vigilant. SCP-005 was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. There are more anomalies out there, more dangers." Hughes leaned forward, his gaze intense. "And we'll be ready for them. We've learned a lot from this. We won't be caught off guard again." A knock on the door interrupted their conversation. Emily entered, looking weary but determined. "I've been going through the records," she said. "There are references to other artifacts linked to SCP-005. We need to find them and secure them before anyone else does." Maria felt a chill at the thought. "Agreed. We can't let these things fall into the wrong hands." They spent the day reviewing reports and planning their next steps. The Foundation buzzed with activity, the staff working tirelessly to strengthen their defenses and track down other anomalies. As night fell, Maria found herself alone in her office, the shadows long and deep. She looked at the remains of SCP-005, now safely contained in a reinforced case. The key was shattered, its power neutralized, but its legacy remained. A soft knock on the door made her jump. Hughes stepped in, a small smile on his face. "Thought you might want some company." Maria smiled back, grateful for the distraction. "Thanks, John, it's been a long day." They sat in companionable silence, the weight of their experiences hanging between them. Finally, Hughes spoke. "You did good, Maria. We all did." Maria nodded, feeling a sense of closure. "We did. But this isn't the end. We have to keep fighting, keep protecting the world from these threats." Hughes reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We will. Together." As they sat in the quiet office, Maria felt a renewed sense of purpose. The battle against the darkness was far from over, but they were ready. They had faced the horrors of SCP-005 and emerged stronger, more united. The true horror of the skeleton key had been vanquished, but the shadows still lingered, waiting for their chance to strike. Maria knew they had to remain vigilant, always prepared for the next challenge. But for now, they had won a significant victory. The Foundation was stronger, and so were they. As the night deepened, Maria allowed herself a moment of peace, knowing that they were ready for whatever came next. The fight against the unknown would continue, but they would face it together, armed with knowledge and determination. The darkness had been pushed back, and they stood as guardians against its return.